My talk is how to become a WordPress plugin developer. And by a show of hands, how many of you are plugin developers here? Nice. Okay, this talk is targeted to the new users who have been using WordPress for a long time, who want to develop a plugin. So I'm going to target them to introduce the concept of plugin and what are the tools you can use that would speed up your plugin development process, and some usual tips and tricks around plugins, and what are the good practices to follow when you develop a plugin. So first about me, my name is Prasath Nadarajah. I live in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and I'm a WordPress developer since 2011. So I started with WordPress through a project run by Google, which is called Google Summer of Code. So how many of you have heard of that? The Google Summer of Code program? Nice. So I back in 2011, I applied for that program, and I got selected to work on WordPress. In this presentation, I'm going to run through a couple of things. First, I'll introduce the concept of plugin. What is a plugin? What you need to know about plugin development. And I'll just quickly introduce how to create your first plugin. A simple example. And as we all are developers, tools makes us easy to develop plugins. So I'm going to run through some of my favorite tools I use during plugin development, and I'll ask for suggestions whether you have any better tool than that. And some debugging techniques, general PHP techniques, JavaScript techniques, and there are specific things you can do in WordPress to debug a plugin, what problems you are going through, and some tips and tricks. First of all, why we need plugins in WordPress? Yeah, extensibility. Basically extensibility, because WordPress doesn't provide all the things you need in a website. For example, if you need a Twitter widget, or pretty much basically it goes by some minimalistic approach. You get the basic setup to a website, but if you need specific things, you have to choose a plugin and install it. There are about 30,000 plugins in the plugin repository, but there may be occasions where a certain plugin doesn't suit your needs. There will be no plugins that doesn't suit what you want to do with your website. So you have to hire a plugin developer, or you can start developing your own plugin. So this is basically what a plugin can extend WordPress to do almost anything you imagine. So first of all, what you need to know to develop a plugin. So WordPress basically is written in PHP. So you need to know the language well. You need to know how to code in PHP. And basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript will do to develop a plugin. There may be occasions where you don't need to write anything in CSS or JavaScript. And you need to know a basic knowledge on MySQL, how to save your data, how to query your data better. So WordPress plugins is based on a concept called hooks, where WordPress provides extension points to clearly say that it's the correct word, I think. WordPress provides extension points within the WordPress where you can hook your code and modify the way WordPress works. So the main hooks, there are two types of hooks. One is called action, and the other one is called filter. So I'm not going to go deep into that. You can look into the WordPress codex page, or you Google it very much. So these talks, I'm not intending to cover anything code related. So I'm just trying to introduce the concept of what a plugin is. So first, I'll show you a very simple example of how to create your own plugin. The first thing you need to do is choose a unique name for a plugin and create a PHP file based on that. So a simple example, I like to So who knows who Chuck Norris is? Yeah. So, so I have my personal blogs, and I like Chuck Norris very much. I want to display some Chuck Norris facts in the header of my blog or site. So the first thing I have to do is create a file called chucknorris.php. That's the initial point in creating a WordPress plugin. And you must declare some information about your plugin so the WordPress can understand what it is do. So these are the parameters you have to fill up. You don't need to fill up everything. Just a plugin name would do. So I'm naming it as Chuck Norris Facts because basically it displays all the Chuck Norris facts in my website. So I can create a website for that plugin or pull a point to an existing website. This website is actually real. It displays all the Chuck Norris facts. And the description is it displays Chuck Norris facts in your blog. And this is a version. And I'm the author of this plugin. That's my URL. And I choose it to use the GPL version for this plugin. And so after you create the chucknorris.php file, you wrap it up into a folder called Chuck Norris Facts, and you place it inside the WP content folder in WordPress. So that's how you, and you have to go to the dashboard and activate the plugin. So the plugin will display Chuck Norris Facts in your blog. And next I'm going to talk about how can you host your plugin. So there are a couple of ways. The best thing recommended is to host your plugin in the WordPress.org repository in the plugin directory. So it's visible to a lot of users. A lot of users know what the WordPress.org plugin repository is. A lot of users search the plugin repository to find some plugins they need. So that's the best way to do that. Also, you can start a website called chucknorrisfactsplugin.com and have a Twitter account, Facebook account to promote that. This is the, when I decided to talk on this, these are the important things I thought I might need to cover, because as you progress as a developer, you get better and better, and you get introduced to a lot of tools. So I'm not a developer who am I when I started back in 2011. My process had changed, my tools had changed. So I want you guys to get familiar with some of these tools. You can look it up in Google and get to know there are tools to do that. So when I started in work also, it took like 9 months to get me the perfect setup to develop. First thing is choosing your IDE. So how many of you choose PHPStorm? Nice. Who uses Sublime Text? Okay, I've seen that a lot of users use Sublime Text over PHPStorm. And these are some code eyes only available for Mac, and NetBeans, and Eclipse also has a PHP development kit. So is there any other IDEs I didn't cover here? That's your favorite? What? Oh, Vim is a different story. Huh? Yeah, no, I personally wouldn't recommend Notepad++ because it doesn't give much features. I personally love PHPStorm because before starting WordPress, I was a Java developer. So there is a Java IDE. PHPStorm is done by a company called JetBrains. They started initially with the Java IDE, and it's the best among all the Java IDEs. So I liked PHPStorm because of that, because I'm more familiar with all the interfaces and techniques. But if you want to choose your IDE in your own, you like it, it's okay. But I personally recommend PHPStorm. So choosing the IDE is one important thing, and mastering the IDE is more important than that. There are a lot of tools. In fact, in PHPStorm, there is a report it will show you which are the features you are using, which are you're not using. So these are the common features I use throughout the development. The first one is code searching. PHPStorm Even you can search by regular expressions in PHPStorm. For WordPress, if you have to identify a filter, where this filter is getting fired and which plugins are using this filter, you can choose the hook name and search throughout the code base, and it will show you where it's getting used. The second thing I used most is code inspection, PHPStorm. In PHPStorm, you can even create a custom inspection profile. And in general, for PHP, it will show you whether a variable is not used anywhere or whether a variable is not declared anywhere and having been used. If there is an unreachable statement in your PHP code, it will show you with a yellow highlight, all those things. And code refactoring. If you, it's something common happen. It's something common that happened during the development. When you choose a variable name, after some time you decided, okay, I'm going to name this variable for another name. So normally what people do is they will change the variable name and go throughout every places it has declared and change it. But in IDEs, you can refactor that. You can click that variable name and choose refactoring. It will automatically change all the old variable names to the new variable one. The other thing I use the most is PHPStorm has a built-in FTP, SFTP client. So when we, like 3 or 4 years, or maybe 5 years ago, there is not only one tool used for development. We use a different FTP client, ID a different thing, maybe version control is a different interface. We used to switch between these tools for development, but nowadays it's all available within one IDE. So for me, I personally use everything within the PHPStorm interface. I don't use any other programs. And the other cool thing is XDebug. Who use XDebug here? Who use XDebug to remote debug their web scripts? Nice. So that's the most best thing I use in PHPStorm. So remote debugging is you can interrupt your PHP sessions within the server. So the server will create a snapshot and send to your IDE, and the snapshot will have all the variable names, how the code is getting executed, etc. If you want to try out, you can go and Google, and every IDE has a different setup, how to set up XDebug. You can Google and see how it works in your IDE. And version control, I think the previous speaker mentioned that you can do version control within the IDE itself. You don't need to use command line or a different UI tool. And I'll go through some of the useful browser extensions I use. The first one is I test all my development in Chrome, and Chrome has a very nice set of tools. They call it Chrome Developer Tools. So I think Firefox also has a built-in developer tools you can use to inspect the HTML tags and what styles are applied for that. The other one you use is PHPStorm. PHPStorm has a browser extension for Chrome and for Firefox surface. So what it provides is what we call the live editing or live coding, whatever you want to call, where you make change in your IDE and will automatically get updated in your browser. So how many of you use dual monitors to program? So that's the use of this. You have your browser screen in your one monitor and your IDE in your other monitor. So when you code, it automatically absorbs all the changes and displays it. You don't need to refresh your browser again. And the other extension I use is Vaporizer. This is nothing directly related to development. It's a small plugin. When you go to a website, it may use a different theme or different function, and it looks cool, and you want to know which technologies they are using. So this plugin will give you a drop-down of tools. Okay, this site is running on WordPress.com. It's using jQuery. It's using modernizer scripts, etc. And the other plugin I use is Postman REST client. So oftentimes you have to develop APIs for your plugins. Normally, or in your WordPress site, you may have to add WordPress already provides a web services API, but it may not enough for you. So you need to add some custom methods. For example, WordPress doesn't provide user management through APIs. So you want to, when you have a mobile client and you want a user to register themselves, so you want to extend the API. So after writing the API code, this extension you can add the URL and give all the parameters and create a HTTP request or a REST API request. So you can debug the request within the backend. And the last one I use is Tinker. This is used after you have developed a script, you can refresh your browser, and you may need to tweak some of the UIs. For example, you want to have the margin width from 20 to 20 pixels. So what we do is normally we right-click on the Chrome DevTools and try to alter that. And after we get the optimal thing, we again copy that configurations to the IDE. But using Tinker, if you modify something in Chrome DevTools, it automatically uploads to your IDE or remote server. So you don't have to duplicate the work. These are some of the extensions I use and my personal. So does anyone have anything to recommend other than this? What they use, they find it very useful? Yeah, Firebug. I have Firebug in my other session. I'll tell you why I don't like Firebug. Anything? Yeah? CodeKit. I haven't heard of it. What it does?
It's a compiler that
Okay. So it's for more.
just like a software for development.
Okay, cool.
Hello. Hi.
What?
Actual live reload plugin.
It's a plugin for Chrome?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So there is one suggestion. It's called CodeKit, and the other one is library. I have introduced some of my favorite tools here. Now I'll go through some of the plugin debugging techniques that I use during development. First one is logging techniques. So there is two different school of thoughts. One people like to log all the events and go through the logs when a software is not performing up to the expectations or not giving any output. Some people don't like logging. So most of the PHP developers, when they start developing, they start with logging techniques. The very basic thing you do is do a variable dump and see what the variables are, what's the data it has. So you can use variable dump. It's called var dump. You can use var dump only, or you can use var dump with a die or a exit code. So the die exit codes comes handy when there is a page redirection. So if you have only the variable dump and the redirection is happened after the variable dump, you won't get the output. So if you put a die or an exit, you can cleanly see the output. Also, if you exit before the output get rendering, the variable dump interface is very nice. There is nothing or WordPress specific things. It will only show you the variable data. The other thing is PHP error logs. If you are developing on a server, you can get the error logs from the temp/log folder. So if you are running anything within the code you're not sure about, you can do an error log statement and log something or log the variable and go through the error log slice and see whether what the information has been logged. The one thing we use frequently in our when I develop is the function wp-mail. So there is often time in WordPress you call a function and get the results, and the other next line you do is you do error check whether it has thrown an error or it has executed successfully. For example, if you are making a REST request and you get the results, first thing you do is you do an error check whether it has thrown an error or the results has been come. So when the error check is there, you can use this function wp-mail and print all the data and send you a mail. So in the mail you can check, okay, this request has been not been made, what are the things went wrong, what's the data, output data it has come, so what's the error message is there. And for JavaScript, there is a console log function. Within your JavaScript code, you can log all your Java's variable, something similar to variable dump. And the easiest one is the alert function. When the JavaScript code is getting executed, you can put an alert and see what's the variable output is within that. You can click OK, OK, and see the execution path. In WordPress, there is a constant called WP debug log. If you enable it, within the WP content directory, it will create a file called debug log, and it will log all the WordPress errors or PHP errors within that. So you can inspect that constantly if you want. The next thing I use for development is what I call is live techniques. That's where XDebug comes handy. So compared to, like he mentioned, Firebugs is similar to a log technique, right? It will log all your log messages within the browser. So what the thing I hate about logging techniques is after you have get your code right, you forget to remove your code. So it will there forever. So it's often when we review code, the debug code will be there. So we ask them to remove it. When you use live techniques, you don't have to write anything additional to log anything. For example, in XDebug, your IDE will show you a snapshot of your current program. You can inspect all the variables, file paths, etc. You don't have to. For example, if you are using a logging technique, the first thing you will do is print the variable and see. Okay, there is not much information in that. Then you have to print the file path and see. So oftentimes there are about 3 or 4 logging commands we have to write to figure out what went wrong. And after we got it right, we have to remove all the commands. So in using live techniques, you don't have to do that. Similar to XDebugs in Chrome developer, for JavaScript in Chrome developer tools, there is an inbuilt Chrome debugger. It's similar to XDebugs where you set the breakpoints and you can inspect the variables. The client-side tools, pretty much everything can be done by Postman REST clients, except you can't send an XMLRPC request from that. For that, I use, it's on a Mac-only tool. It's called Dishnet XMLRPC Client. You can specify the URL and XMLRPC parameters, and within one click, you can send a request to a WordPress site. Without that, anything you can do with a Postman REST client, HTTP request, put request, delete request, everything you can do that from the REST client. These are WordPress debugging contents. So WP debug log, WP display, and the script debug, you can, so what WordPress do is, there are a lot of JavaScript files in WordPress. So when serving a site, it will compress all the files. And when you are loading a WordPress powered page, it will load all the compressed JavaScript files. But when you are debugging something, you need the whole file without compression because you can easily read the code. For that, you can declare the script debug variable. It will load all the developer files, not the production files. And same as that, save queries. It will save all your database queries. And there are some WordPress plugins which are built for development. The very popular one is called Debug Bar, where you get a bar in your WordPress site. You can click that and see what are the active cron jobs are there, what are the queries executed, and what information is there in the cache. And there is one thing called core control. It's the same. It's also like Debug Bar. It will provide you more information on what's being executed, etc. And there is one called log depreciation node. So I don't need to go much into detail of these. I want you to just familiarize with these names. So when you are starting WordPress development, you will remember this and try to install it in your local checkout and see what information it provides. And some of the tips and tricks during WordPress development. First thing is code is proprietary. Try to write clean code. So the better way to write WordPress clean code is to read the WordPress core itself. So you understand how the code is written very cleanly and you adopt that change. So most of the popular plugins, it will look like WordPress core style. And there's a set of WordPress coding standards in the codex. Please try to follow that. We don't use camel cases. Use underscore within function names. This is a common mistake first plugin developers do. They echo the script they want to load. Don't do that. Use the enqueue functions provided by WordPress. It will check whether the script has been already loaded and load it appropriately with the version. And always leave room to your plugin to be internationalized. Use the internationalized functions. There is a set of functions provided by WordPress to echo your output within the internationalization framework. So you can add internationalization support later. And use namespacing. Avoid conflicts with other plugins. If you are writing a function, getName, don't name it as getName. Use your prefix within the function, like Chuck Norris getName, etc. So you avoid a lot of conflicts. And use built-in functions and APIs as possible. So a classic example is the HTTP API provided by WordPress. It is developed to work on almost all the possible host environments. So don't use file get contents in PHP. Use the HTTP API. And take security seriously. Validize, sanitize, and escape all the input and output within WordPress. So all these functions are provided by WordPress. And use nonces to validate your form. Provide help screens. So WordPress comes with a help screen on top of in the backend. You can extend that and add information for your plugin. Use the help screens as much as possible. So your plugin users can get help within the screen itself. And as I mentioned, read WordPress core regularly. It will help you to understand WordPress better and how to write better code, how to use internal functions, and useful resources. The first best thing is read through the codex if you want to know about a filter or want an example on that. And there is also WordPress.org forums where you can ask developer support how to do that. And there is a couple of books on WordPress, how to start plugin development. So when I first started, I followed a book and wrote, I think it's a guest book plugin. So when someone comes to your blog, they can give guest comments. And there is online tutorials as well. Smashing Magazine has some tutorials, and there is Tuts Network. They have some tutorials, and you can. There's the Stack Exchange QA for WordPress is very active. It's in WordPress.stackexchange.com. So if you have developer questions, you can post it there. Someone will answer. Thank you very much. And does anyone have any questions?
I do not know whether this is in scope of your presentation or not, but I would like to get into details of plugin directory structures. If you like to suggest some practices for
normally, directories, obviously you have to have your plugin name file. For example, if the directory is Chuck Norris facts, you have to have a file called chucknorrisfacts.php. So what I have seen is you accumulate all the CSS file and put inside a CSS directory, and JS files and all inside the JS directory. And normally, if you are using a lot of classes or you are abstracting all your methods, you put inside an includes folder. So for example, if you want to communicate with Twitter, first you write the class and insert a class somewhere else. So you can put the class.twitterphp inside the includes folder. That's how I have seen they arranged the plugin files.
if you are using any third-party libraries or any third-party vendor plugins
No, you can, are you talking about extending a third-party plugin? A third-party PHP library. You can put inside the include folder. No, there is no convention. There is no convention on how to arrange your code. It's all about best practices. So this is followed by most of the developers. So when someone sees your plugin and see these folders, includes CSS, JS, they know what is inside. So it's better to follow that. Yeah.
Hi Prasath. I want to ask, like, if I initialize a plugin, if I develop a plugin, and initially I create a database, I usually create database by a custom MySQL query. Is it a good practice to do, or should I opt WordPress queries to create a database and then insert values in tables with WordPress queries, which is the best practice?
I didn't get your question. Can you?
I want to ask, like, when I develop a plugin, initially I create a database with MySQL custom queries.
Yeah.
I do not use WordPress WPDB queries.
Okay.
Okay. And when I have to insert data in database, like values in those tables which I have created earlier, I still use MySQL queries. I do not opt actually WPDB queries. So which is a best practice?
No, WPDB has inbuilt cache. So
Yeah.
when you are repeating a query, it recognizes it and it caches and it pull out from the cache. So I would recommend to use to WPDB.
So in case of insert, there is no need of retrieving from cache. In case of insert or update. In case of insert or update, we do not require anything to get it from cache memory. So why should I opt WPDB?
I'm not sure about that, but you can use it
Okay,
either.
just take an example. If I have a blank table and I am just entering the user details, first name, last name, email address.
Yeah.
Prasath enters Prasath, your surname and your email address. Vivek Tiwari, his email address. Third one, Himanshu Mehta, his email address. So where's the cache will take place?
If you're using your own table, you can use, but I would recommend you to use the inbuilt WordPress table. For example,
No,
if you
for plugin development, like if I am building a plugin for to get post from Facebook page. Let's take an example.
Yeah.
To get post from Facebook page. Initially, I make user login through Facebook, fetch his details. So I need a table to store his his user ID, his email, his date on which.
Same goes. You can use the WordPress meta tables.
Okay. If the fields, if the columns which I need is less in WP meta table.
Okay. Then you can create your own table and.
Then I have to create my own. Okay.
Yeah.
Next part. If I have to fetch all the posts from his page, then where should I store those posts? I need a table for that thing.
Yes. Okay. Then you may want to create a table.
So then in that case, I'm asking which one is better, WPDB queries or my custom PHP queries? So let him answer, please. Please, sir.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt?
Prasath, I'll just reframe what he's been trying to say. If I have developed a plugin in MySQL, writing my custom queries, do I keep those queries or do I go with WP admin queries? WP.
I would recommend for WPDB.
But is it compulsory? That's the question.
No. You don't need to follow any of the WordPress standards. You can write simple PHP to get a plugin working, but still, it's not recommended.
Nothing is compulsory. The question should be what is ideal.
Okay, what is ideal? Yeah.
He gave you the answer. He gave you the answer.
Questions? That's it, right?
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.